Mm-hmm. 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 Surprise,
Let's
Neo
go.
traders, Neo family.
I
How
wake
are
up
we
to a
doing,
little
guys?
bit of
God
drool
bless
on my
each and every single one of
butterfly.
you guys. We're gonna get straight into the Neo technical analysis, but before we do, it would mean a lot to me. We're on the road to 2,000 subscribers, baby. So if you could slap the subscribe button, punch the like button, and let's get straight in to the technical analysis. Neo stock has been doing some interesting stuff since we last talked about it, right? You saw a little bit of a retracement here back into your Neo RSI band in the weekly time frame. So when we talk about the broader time frame on Neo, it is undoubtedly bullish. But let me tell you why, right? You zoom out and you see this inverted head and shoulder structure. Shoulder, head, shoulder. And on this right shoulder, you've seen some very accumulative like structure, right? Very obvious accumulation here with the U shape of buying. And you see the bulls are winning. When you look at the volume profile, every single leg higher, you have bullish volume stepping in here. The question is, right, where does that next leg higher come in? I believe it may be close. And the reason I think so is, right, you have not just a retest of your previous downtrend here off of this sell-off, but you also have, traders, like we talked about, another retest of this RSI band. Now, if you lose this RSI band, it'll be very obvious to me that you might continue to sell off here until you hit this uptrend. This uptrend has acted as significant launch pad support for Neo stock, and in my opinion, not financial advice, not a financial advisor, would act as a beautiful averaging down or accumulation opportunity, right? You look at the sheer moves and the firepower that's happened off of this line: 50%, 150%, 56%, right? And when you average about 80 to 50% off of a move, right? If you came down to touch that trend line, guys, that 50% takes you straight into our long-term resistance of 771. That is where we need to continue to stair step higher and clear, because once you clear that line, guys, all TA goes out the door, right? If you clear 771 with substantial volume that we're watching, it's likely that you kind of teleport and that you immediately go up to $9 to $10. If that happens and you have the firepower to clear 10, which you could, right? It's likely you come up to 16. That's the kind of volatility we're talking about on this stock. And although it may seem boring right now, it is meant to be, right? I'm sure a lot of people think that this thing is absolutely done, dusted, and cooked. But I think when you look at the volume downtrend here, exhaustion of volume, you have an opportunity, especially going into earnings on the second, to kind of trade flat here. And if you build a solid foundation, traders, I want you to see exactly where you are. This is the best case scenario, right? If you can build that solid foundation on previous resistance. Look, you literally just rejected this candle. Whoop, get out of here, TradingView. You literally just rejected this candle wick on the 25th of December. You literally retested it on the 29th of December. You retested on the 8th of September, and then you blast off. This key area 580 to 560 is immensely important for the future of this stock, right? If you fall in here, you're going to show weakness, and you're most likely going to go to $5 flat. Holding this means you've only done it, right, within the last 3 to 2 years. You've only held this position twice. You blasted through it here, held above it for 2 weeks, and then capitulated underneath. The only other setup that Neo has in recent history within a 2-year window is the one you have right now, right? You had this one where you blasted through it during the summer, retested 560, and then blasted through into our next horizontal resistance. You're doing the same thing right now, right? And this is where I get bullish, because if you can successfully hold this as support, multiple confluent technical support lines here with the downtrend you're bouncing and the horizontal support you're bouncing and your RSI band, you're bouncing. There's a very unique opportunity here for NEO to find a lower high or a higher low, and blast this thing to the moon. That is the best case scenario, right? You need to hold this position. And when you look on the daily chart, traders, although somewhat bearish, right? You have a gap fill currently sitting at 498, and you have sliced through the 50 line on the RSI. I like the technical setup here of multiple wicking candles showing support. And although the volume is lackluster, right, you could very easily call this a shoulder, head, shoulder in a bearish way, right? And if that was true, you would find a retest of this wedge resistance right around 125 to 130 before shouldering back down into that trend line, filling the gap. But traders also, right, if that is not the case, you should expect a higher high because this is a technical higher low, right? You're holding support in a very important location. This is a technical higher low. If that is able to hold, you should see a higher high because you do have the gap fill at 711 that you have yet to fill. That's what we're watching for in the daily time frame here for NEO stock. It's really an important location, a battle of the bulls and the bears. And we'll see who comes out on top. But I am very, very bullish on the long-term accumulative structure of this stock. And I like the stock. I really, really like the stock. I like the community. And I think that this thing's going to do crazy things during the summer. I really, really do. Just the more you zoom out here, you see how much more it is alike in 2021, right? During this stretch of price action, you had an inverted shoulder, head, right shoulder that you broke that neckline, broke this neckline, right? Very similar to breaking this neckline and then breaking this neckline. And then you see just price discovery, right? Because there's so much when you look at the VRVP, this zone is pretty much illiquid. When you see moves down this quickly, oftentimes when stocks regain that previous resistance, you see them cruise, right? Just as easily as it falls, it can easily rise back again. So that's what we're watching for the macro charting on NEO stock. I can show you the quarterly MACD still curling up on NEO. And that's our long-term goal here, is if you can see this thing cross green, right, you're flipping the macro and you are easily in the driver's seat as a bull to see another run up like this. That is the kind of gain potential that NEO has on the upside, right? On the downside, we've talked about it. We think it's possible you can come back to this trend line and make a more macro low at 380. But we are not even close to talking about that price target. So we'll get there when we get there, right? On the 4-hour chart, this is the more micro picture for NEO stock. What are you going to do on the time frame? I think it's likely that you see a retest of that 630 area as you look to invalidate this more micro shoulder, head, right shoulder, right? Because when you look at this, you broke this resistance line that you had been trading under for about 2 weeks. Now that you've broken above it off of a pretty nasty hammer candle, you should expect a higher low and then a little bit of a bid here to not only get back above the 200-day EMA on the 4-hour, but also retest this strategic resistance. If you clear this resistance, it's likely you come back up to $7, and that would be beautiful. But we'll cover that once we get there as well. Let's see. Closing slightly beneath the 9-day EMA on the weekly. I'd like to see us close on the weekly coming into Friday tomorrow above 9 or 520, 592. That's going to be 592 is your level to beat. If you are looking for a bullish weekly close on the daily time frame, you're still rejecting the 50-day EMA. So this is the scenario in which you could test low fives, as if you cannot hold the 50-day EMA. As you can see, you had a hammer candle, very beautiful candle structure, and 2 wicks, right? That's bullish when you're looking for an upswing. but you need to gain 593. So pretty much right in line with that weekly close. If you see this thing swing back up, hopefully you can get back above the 9-day EMA because that is cruising downwards. And when you see that short-term momentum indicator cross beneath the 50, oftentimes you see momentum swings, right? We caught this one back here in early March that you were going to see a swing up because you had not only volume come into the stock, but you also had the 9 cross through the 50. And that acts as a significant momentum indicator. That was a 15% daily move, traders. You've also seen it the other way, right? You saw where the 9 crossed through the 50 here, and you saw 2% day, 4% day, 3% day, a 3% day, right? Back-to-back losses in the stock. So when you're looking for these swing trades, or at least you want to know, have your finger on the pulse, right? You want to know what's happening in the stock. These are good indicators to watch. So not financial advice. If you guys are finding this informative, please slap the subscribe button and let's continue to get into IWM, right? IWM is the meme basket, the index fund that we track when we watch Neostock, right? It's important to note here that you've cleared your previous all-time high. Not only did you clear it, you retested it, and then you made another all-time high. That's a bullish sign. But there are signs on the weekly and the daily that you may be a little overcooked here, right? When we look at this thing, you can see you cleared this previous resistance trend, but in doing so, right, you're leaving a long wick candle. That looks very toppy to me. And if you don't see a green Friday, which are hard to come by, let's be honest, you could see IWM take a little bit of a pullback here to fill some of those juicy daily gaps. And when I say the juicy daily gaps, you're seeing a little bit of a rejection here and bearish divergence on the daily. This is very, very, like a topping formation, right? You saw the same thing on IWM back in, what was this? January. And I'm going to point it out to you right now, right? We had this top, higher high, a lower high in the RSI, or an equal high, right? That is bearish divergence. You look at the stock now, or the index now, you can see this higher high, but you see the very clear and obvious lower high on the RSI on the daily time frame. So don't be surprised if you see IWM pull back here. In fact, you're printing a bearish engulfing candle. So the fact that NEO is holding up as well as it is, only down 1.15, you're outperforming the S&P right now. And I think that's important to note, right? So if you see IWM trade sideways here, it's likely you're going to see another all-time high and maybe another touch of bearish divergence. If you see IWM puke, well, you're looking to get the gap at currently 253, and you could fill that along this uptrend. That's going to be important to see if IWM can hold this strength, as you've already seen 18% rally and then another 20% rally off of this trend line, guys. You could even call this your bull run trend line, right? If you hold this trend line, it's very likely IWM fills the gap before running higher. Another 20% takes you to 300, which is our thesis, right? So these are important to note. You don't want to see, I personally would like to see a more healthy pullback, fill the gaps, and then another run higher, as you don't want to see multiple touches of bearish divergence, as they often lead to these bigger Band-Aid rips, right? So that's what we got for the day on IWM, NEO stock. Our thesis is NEO is going to go higher. I have very strong conviction in it. If you guys are also NEO holders, it would mean a lot if we liked the video. Subscribe and tune in for the next one, guys. As always, God bless you and your families. And remember, traders, the best is yet to come. Let's go.